Here's something nobody is saying out loud at the dinner table. They feel it in the way certain jobs are suddenly harder to fill, in the way a recent grad can't get a call back, in the way a company that used to hire 20 people now hires 5 and calls it efficiency. The world is changing faster than the headlines are keeping up with. And the honest question, the one that keeps some of us up at night: when AI takes jobs, what happens to your money? Because the version of financial security most of us were taught was built for a world that had one assumption running underneath all of it: that your labor would always be worth something. That showing up, staying current, hard work would translate into income. And income would become savings. And savings would become freedom. What happens if that chain gets interrupted? That's what we're going to work through today. Not to scare anyone. Because fear doesn't pay the bills. The people who come out the other side of big transitions intact are not the ones who got lucky. They're the ones who saw it coming and quietly adjusted. The first thing most people do when they hear something like AI will take jobs is to think, this won't really happen to me. And that's not laziness. That's self-protection. The brain is filtering out threats it can't immediately act on. But here's the reframe. This isn't about whether your specific job disappears. That conversation is too narrow. The real question is about income concentration. Every time a major productivity shift happened, and there have been a few, the gains didn't flow evenly. The people and institutions closest to the new technology captured most of the value. The people farther away absorbed most of the disruption. Not because the world was cruel, just because capital moves faster than wages do. That's the actual risk worth planning for. Not, will my job disappear tomorrow, but is my financial life structured so that if income gets disrupted, for any reason, will I be okay? And if the honest answer is no, it's a gap worth closing. Think about how most people have their financial life set up. One job, one income stream. Every bill, every goal, every bit of breathing room runs through that one pipe. The antidote has always had the same name: diversification. We talk about it constantly when it comes to investments. Never put everything in one stock. Spread the risk. But we almost never apply that same logic to income. Income diversification doesn't mean you have to build a side business or become an entrepreneur overnight. It can look like owning assets that generate passive income, investments that pay dividends, real estate that earns rent, a small stake in something that compounds over time. If you have assets in addition to a job, a disruption to your job is a crisis you can manage. If your job is the only thing, a disruption is something that unravels everything at once. So the first practical shift in thinking is this: start treating passive income, however small, as a genuine priority, not a nice to have when things are comfortable. Here's something worth understanding. Some skills to appreciate. They're valuable now with this set of tools, in this context. But the moment the context changes, new software, new processes, new technology, that value starts fading. You have to keep refreshing just to stay even. Other skills compound, and financial literacy is one of them. Understanding how money works, how assets appreciate, how interest compounds, how to evaluate risk and return, that doesn't expire. It doesn't become obsolete when a new platform launches or an AI gets better at a specific task. It applies whether the economy looks like it does today or like something we can't fully picture yet. The person who genuinely understands how wealth is built is never starting from zero. They know what questions to ask. They know how to adapt. So if you're thinking about where to invest time right now, not just money, but actual time, that's where the return is. Let's be real about what we're working with. Most people aren't sitting on a pile of capital looking for somewhere to put it. They're managing tight budgets and real obligations. If you have very little to invest right now, the highest return move is probably not a financial product. It's plugging the income leaks. High interest debt, subscriptions you forgot about, money moving in ways you haven't examined closely. Getting your expenses genuinely under control is the closest thing to an instant pay raise, and it creates the margin that everything else requires. If you have a small amount to invest consistently, the argument for broad index funds remains strong. You're not betting on which company wins. You're betting that economic activity continues and that the productivity gains from technology, AI included, eventually show up in corporate earnings across the market. If you're further along and have more flexibility, looking at income generating assets makes sense. Dividend paying funds, real estate investment trusts, or actual property if the numbers work in your market. None of this is complicated. What makes it hard is doing it consistently, especially in a period when everything feels uncertain. But uncertainty is actually when the habit matters most, because you're buying at prices that reflect the fear, not the recovery. There are two kinds of people right now. The first kind gets anxious. They hear the economy is shifting, and it confirms a fear they've been carrying, that they're already behind, that the window is closing, that it's too late to fix things. If that's where you are, the most important thing to hear is this. The moves that build financial resilience aren't dramatic. They're small, consistent, and they start wherever you actually are right now, not where you wished you had started. The second kind gets energized. They hear the same thing and they think, okay, this is a reason to move. If passive income matters more now, let's build some. If financial literacy is a compounding skill, let's develop it properly. If the gap between people with assets and people without is widening, let's make sure we're on the right side of it. If that's you, the only thing to watch out for is that the energy doesn't dissipate before the actions become habits. Either way, the fundamentals don't change. They just become more important. Spend less than you earn. Own assets, not just labor. Understand what you own and why. Build enough margin that life's disruptions don't become financial catastrophes. These were good ideas before AI entered the picture. They're better ones now. Here's the thing about big economic shifts. They don't arrive with a warning. They arrive, and then people look back and identify the moment when things changed, usually about 10 years after the fact. The investors who built real wealth through those transitions weren't smarter or luckier. They just had a clear enough picture of what was happening to take a few quiet steps in the right direction before the crowd did. So the question is, if your income disappeared tomorrow, not permanently, just for a season, how long could you hold your life together? And whatever that answer is, what's one thing you could do this month to extend it? If this video helped you, consider subscribing. You can also like, comment, or share. See you in the next video.